meeting to order, and it's we're a little late. It's 2:04. Present are members Nancy Olson, Bob Gebert, Bill Measy, Nancy Hall, Joe Schofield. Ron Fonte may be calling in, and Ron Grega apparently is going to be a little bit late. So, but we have a quorum. Move on to the approval of the February minutes. Let me just make a comment that as these minutes were originally, as I received them from the minute taker, the attempt was to make she tried, this is a new minute taker, and she tried to do them almost verbatim, and they were a mess, frankly. They were not very easy to understand, and they had a lot of irrelevant stuff in them, little side comments and all sorts of things. So if you read them, you will see that I redid them virtually in their entirety. You laugh. It took me a day to do it, and but what I tried to do is just summarize our discussions, which I think is the way the minutes should be taken. There should be a summary of what we discussed and any decisions we made and comments that were directly relevant. So I'm hoping that we can work around to that kind of minute taking, that I don't have to go through this quite such an onerous process again the next time around. In any event, do I have a motion to, or are there any changes you want? Any changes or additions, corrections, anything to the minutes? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Make a motion, we accept.
Second.
Bob Geppert made the motion, Nancy Paul seconded it. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
It's unanimous, 5-0. Okay. Nancy, you want to take this?
Budget?
Yeah.
We're still pretty much under budget through this point in the year. There's a couple of things I'll have to talk about with Scott. If you look at like mulch in account 706502 on the first page, we're over budget by about 10,000, but we're under budget up above for the shared expenses. So I need to figure out with Scott if some of those should be up above and the pine straw up above 706557, since we don't have any expenses there. But overall, most of the accounts are right in line with where they should be. Some of them that aren't are because they're semi-annual expenses and we don't have 6 months in yet. Trying to think if there's anything that was unusual in it this month, and I don't think there was.
You got HOA agreement fees highlighted.
Yeah, I just highlight, like on page 4, I highlighted it. This is the summary of all of our expenses that we approve. So the year-to-date budget is $425,000, we're at $349,000. So that shows us being significantly under budget. But some of the things are coming through a little late, like Securitas. I know those are under contract, so they're the same amount every month. When you look at the detail, they are under budget right now. So I know things like that are going to catch up. So we probably really aren't as much under budget as this makes it appear. So, but still under budget nevertheless. I've started working a little bit on next year's budget, mostly just getting everything set up, the spreadsheet and that, and when I have 6 months expenses at the end of this month, then I'll start plugging in numbers for next year's budget.
Will you be prepared to bring some kind of something preliminary to the April meeting?
Yeah, I can do that because I'll have 6 months
Okay.
expenses that I can plug in half year's worth, so it'll be a start. Another thing I wanted to talk about, and I don't know if Scott would talk about this in a little more depth, there's a real delay, and after I've approved the bills, him getting the check from the CDD, sometimes over 4 weeks before he's getting them. So he's working with Chris to try to get that resolved. But it brings up concern for me because I have several trips coming up, 2 of them that are going to be about a month long. And so I need to find some way that we can get these expenses approved while I'm gone. And I would be fine if somebody here would just be willing to approve them, and then I'll go back through them when I get back, because there's very rarely an error, and when they are, it's just something in the wrong account, which Scott and I can work out when I get back. But I'm gonna be gone for over 3 weeks, end of June, and I'm gonna be gone for a month in September.
Okay.
And that's a long time. When there's already a 4-week delay in getting the checks, we can't leave a 4-week delay in getting it approved and over to them. That's just not acceptable. I mean, right now, there's how much outstanding? Over
I'm-
65,000?
65,000 in replenishment, and I'm holding 121,000 in checks. And you're gonna have about 50 or 60 that are delayed going out because of the replenishment cycle, but this just doubled everything, because I normally should have that payment within, 3 to 5 business days, and I know Chris is looking in on it. So it just started this past month, and nobody knows why, so.
I mean, it's always been kind of slow.
Yeah, they've always been slow, but this is excessive, so.
Nancy, may I suggest that, will you be here for the May meeting, do you think?
Yes, I think so.
Why don't you bring this up, and then we can just find one of us.
Okay.
When everybody's schedule is a little bit
Okay,
more down, we can find one of us to do it.
okay,
I could do it or something else.
yeah.
But,
Yeah, because what I do takes quite a bit of time, but if somebody can just do a quick approval of the dollar amount, then we can get the process started. And like I said, I very rarely find any issues other than something in the wrong account where it's just moving money from one place to another.
okay. Any questions of Nancy? Let the record show that Mr. Pelican has joined the meeting. Okay. There being no questions, I'm going to move an item on to that would really be, I guess, a ponds work group situation. Philip Rovner of Corinna had asked me if we would reconsider what was brought up at the last meeting about us reimbursing some legal costs that Corinna had incurred, having to do with work that they decided not to do in Corinna. And Philip, what I would ask is that you introduce yourself so that the minute taker can get that, and then just kind of fill us in on the background to just remind everybody about what the issue is here.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, members of the Pelican Preserve Advisory Committee. My name is Philip Rovner. I live in Corinna on Julia Drive. I am the president of the Corinna Homeowners Association. The subject for your consideration today is reimbursement for legal expenses incurred by Corinna as a result of an action that was proposed to us by the CDD. Back in January a year ago, we were approached by Mr. Geppert with respect to an issue regarding the flowway that abuts some of the homes in Corinna along Corinna Circle, about 27 homes along Corinna Circle. The issue had to do with the flowway itself and the way the flowway was originally constructed. Apparently the flowway was not built as designed. The question prior to turnover, which is a turnover issue that affects the CDD, was whether or not we should pursue getting the flowway adjusted to its correct design characteristics. Initially, the meeting, I hosted a meeting at which Bob and the Tetra Tech engineer appeared. The belief at that time was that this was an owner issue, and the question was whether or not the owners would simply agree to allow an easement to be placed in lieu of actually going through the construction process. The process with respect to the easement was the fact that based on the CDD's evaluation, there was an insufficient easement and they realized that the Carina had an easement of 10 feet, and that if they were able to overlay on top of that easement, it would satisfy that problem and eliminate the need for construction. But it was still left, at least in the January meeting, it was left as an idea for the owners to consider. We proceeded through most of the summer under that belief, or some belief close to it. And then all of a sudden, as the documents were being drafted, we realized a couple of things. We actually met with Tony. Mr. Geppert met with Tony, the CDD attorney, and also, again, the Tetra Tech engineer. So we met, we had a discussion, at which point Tony laid out for us a plat in which there was the existence of a pipe, a drainage pipe, a stormwater pipe, parallel to the easement and basically through the middle of the easement. And so the concern then became as to whether or not Carina really needed to grant this easement. This was intended to be an accommodation, something that was really simple, was going to save everybody a lot of time and energy and headaches. So we, under our authority at the board, retained our attorney to help us with the easement documentation. It was more complex than we felt we could do on our own. We realized we had this pipe in place, and we were going to have to deal with the possibility that as a result of ingress or egress to the property, that there was some possibility of damage to that pipe. And we wanted to make sure that the CDD understood that it had some ongoing long-term responsibility were it to cause damage to that pipe. So the back and forth pursued. We still felt like it was an item that could be handled administratively rather than going through the construction process. The Tetra Tech engineer basically advised against going through the construction because he felt that due to the slope of the banks into the flowway, that to add new dirt on top of compacted dirt was problematic, that the first good storm would likely wash it away. There's no bulkhead requirement in this situation. This easement, by the way, that Carina owns was done before any homes were built on this property. So the board had no knowledge. We had knowledge of the easement because it was a landscaping easement that was granted to the master. What we didn't know is we didn't have any knowledge of the pipe. So when the pipe became made available, the knowledge of the pipe made available to us, we realized we had a prospective problem that we needed to address. There were a couple of issues with the CDD. The CDD didn't want to have an unlimited claim or an unlimited responsibility, which we certainly understand. There are certain limitations based on state law for governmental units like the CDD. So again, we got our attorney involved. We basically agreed to ingress and egress as a result of this, and with the CDD being liable for whatever damages might exist up to their limit. We're totally satisfied with that. As a result, and to summarize, basically because the master already had a portion of this easement, or had the easement in their favor, the master has voted to accept the partial easement of the CDD. At its last meeting, the CDD board approved the easement, and the Carina board, which is fully responsible for this at the board level, because the easement, the property is actually granted to the board, not to the owners. In February, the Carina board approved the easement. So the matter is fully resolved at this point, as far as we believe. We're asking for reimbursement for the expenses. I've given a copy to the chairman. The total expenses are $2,656.25. And if there are any questions, I'll be glad to answer them.
I would ask for questions and
How
comments.
about-
Mr. Geppert.
Couple points of clarification. The meeting that was held in January with the residents in Philip and Tetra Tech was merely an informational meeting to make the owners aware of the choice they had. From the pond's perspective, when we called the meeting, all we wanted to know was, do the owners want the slope built right, which meant they had to come back and fill it, or are they okay just leaving it like it was? And that was the sum total of our interest. We were just trying to get a sense of what those residents wanted to do, and that's why I contacted the HOA president. So that I can make a recommendation to us, because this was a conveyance site. And that framed the entire thing. I guess the parts where maybe Philip and I different is that he seems to feel that there was an accommodation being requested. And that's not the case as far as I was concerned, because the only person or group or entity that benefited from doing nothing was Lennar. Because Lennar either had to spend the money or they didn't have to spend the money. Had it built correctly, the reference pipe that we're talking about has always been there. It was there from day one, it's there today. Whatever impact that would or wouldn't have on that pipe is the same. So there was no harm, no foul versus with that. And I would take exception to the comment, because I was in the meeting with Tetra Tech, and I never heard him say it would wash away the first time it rained or something, because quite honestly, we redo banks routinely in our community. We've done that on all kinds of bonds, and they're very robust. So again, you know, semantics, but my bottom line is, and it's not the amount of money, but in all due respect to the Carina board, they spend money that they chose to spend. The CDD didn't need it. We were okay with whatever they decided. The only beneficiary is Lennar, and while I respect their request for reimbursement, I think they're directing it at the wrong place. I think they ought to go after Lennar. They're the only ones that save money in this too.
Question, in this meeting in January, was there any discussion of the need for an easement by the CDD?
No, that wasn't the issue then. The only issue is, did you want your yard filled in
Yeah,
and made
okay.
to point or not? Because I didn't know about all the other issues. I know that Tetra Tech said in the beginning, they informed us there were other available easements that they thought they could operate in. That was of no interest to Ponds. This was a conveyance issue. They either were going to make them fix it, meaning Lennar, or they weren't.
Was there a need from the perspective of the CDD, which in this case is Ponds, was there a need that you saw for an easement at any time during the process, or did they even need an easement?
We never needed an easement,
The CDD?
the CDD, because the CDD, if the CDD chose, could tell, because Lennar offered to fix it. They said they would fix it. And the course of least resistance was to have them fix it. If they made it right, then, you know, everybody's happy. But apparently the homeowners felt that they didn't want to go through that, the disruption. And I can respect that. That's why we wanted to get a sense of what they wanted to do. We didn't go out and canvass, someone left that to the board. If the homeowners got it great, they got it with the board, not with us. We tried to do the due diligence, work in the right way, and I think that they did that. Their board did everything right. My only objection is, I guess.
May I comment?
Sure, absolutely.
You know, there's more than one way to look at any issue, and I would certainly respect Bob with respect to issues relating to ponds and water and that kind of thing. And you may be right. Maybe Lennar is the right party to do this, but number one, in all of my dealings with Lennar, and most of you know that I've had some fairly substantial dealings with Lennar, Lennar doesn't typically roll over on things that are of this significance. Their idea of being able to simply go to their vendor and have their vendor correct it probably would have delayed that process by some extended period of time. And there's no guarantee whatsoever that it wouldn't have been more burdensome on the CDD to have had to continue to deal with this issue for some period of time. The proposed improvement would have cost somewhere in the neighborhood of $250,000. I can assure you Lennar doesn't roll over easy on that, at least from my experience. We think this expedited the problem, and the idea of the easement actually came not from us. The idea of the easement came from Tony, the CDD engineer. The CDD, and the system of this may not be entirely right, were prepared to or did make a presentation to the Southwest Florida Management District. The Southwest Florida Management District, we were told, had declined to take up the case because this easement was available. And hence the easement did become an issue, but it wasn't an issue that we brought. We didn't appear before the water district. This was an issue that was recommended, and so the accommodation really said, let's move this agenda item forward. The pipe, you're right, the pipe existed. We had no knowledge of that. I mean, you could charge us and say, well, you should have known. The fact is the pipe existed prior to turnover of the HOA to owner control. At the time of owner control, it was not disclosed by the parties that were responsible for the turnover. So we had no way of knowing that that pipe was there or what our responsibilities were. So again, the semantics of all this are slightly in question. I would agree to that. But the issue is that this moved an agenda really fairly quickly. And for us, having a smaller budget and everything, it is an issue for us. I mean, this uses up most of our budget for legal costs for the year. So it is an issue for us. May not be an issue for you, or maybe an issue for you. But again, this issue has lingered for now more than a year, and we're asking for reimbursement.
If I could make a couple of comments. I was at the board meeting representing PPAC when the CDD, it was on the agenda, and I don't know how it got on the CDD agenda, but it was on the agenda about the easement. And the consensus of the board members at that point in time was that if they didn't resolve it, it could be something that could come back later and haunt the district by the homeowners if there was a problem. And the feeling was that it needed to be resolved. So the engineer was instructed to look into it and also talk to Southwest Florida Water Management and so forth to see what could be done. And I think the whole idea was to try to resolve it without, I don't know that Lennar was ready to step up or not, but to resolve it without further conflict with Lennar, which we've all had plenty of here. So that was how Tony got involved in the issue, and how the engineers continued to go forward. Now, having said all of that, I would just like to tell you give you a little history lesson. Back when Pelican was in the early stages, we have a dump that's out here between Stony Brook and some of the communities in Pelican. And it was active. And there was a lot going on with it, and Waste Management wanted to build it higher and add more to it. And the district, on behalf of the communities, took that on, and there was substantial legal cost within Gateway. Stony Brook and Pelican, each individually, decided to get involved in the suit. And the two representatives that were up front about that were my husband, Paul Fish from Pelican, and Sherry Bucar from Stony Brook. At the end of the day, Waste Management countersued us personally, and the people in Pelican stepped up and paid $30,000 in legal expenses for my husband. Sherry Bucar paid $30,000 out of pocket to protect Pelican and Stony Brook and everybody else from this dump that today could be much higher than it is. So, but that was a decision that the Residents Alliance, at least in Pelican, took on as an additional responsibility. And they paid the legal costs for joining the suit, and then they also paid the legal costs for the countersuit. So, in Sherry's case, unfortunately, Stony Brook didn't step up to take care of it. So I'm of the opinion that when a community steps in on their own, you know up front that you have legal costs, and that would be your responsibility.
With all due respect, Nancy, I would choose to disagree on a couple of issues. Number one, the Residents Alliance, which I'm a big supporter of, is not the same as a homeowners association. The Residents Alliance is an advocacy group which takes actions independent is not governed by any declaration that affects the homeowners on a broad level basis. Number two, we intended to handle this thing without legal intervention all the way up until December, when it was pushed on us that the easement was the preferred choice, not the Lennar choice, and it was preferred choice based on the representation from the CDD's attorney. Again, we tried to do it without legal recourse till we found out about the pipe, and we had no way of knowing about the pipe, so the issue then becomes a matter of doing what was in the best interest of the homeowners association. So I understand that piece of what you're trying to say, but in this case, we would never have addressed this issue on our own. We had no intent of we had no knowledge to address this issue on our own. And we do believe that it has, and you said that in your earlier comments, that this allowed for a turnover of property that otherwise would have taken a great deal of time, energy, effort, and probably money much greater than the amount of the legal fees that were expended. So in this case, I think what we've come up with is an economical solution that benefits the CDD as much as because there's no real benefit to Carina in this case. I mean, Carina was simply trying to protect its interests. So I respect what you said, but I do challenge the difference between what you suggested as it affected Paul and this particular issue.
Bob,
Well,
a question.
we did have one, this last thing. We sat in this room with our legal people, Tetra Tech, and the representatives of Lennar, and they said flat out, it's in the minutes, that they would repair it if the district chose to have it repaired. So again, I'm back to, with all due respect, Bill, the only people that saved money was Lennar. I'm sorry, but that's the bottom line. If we fixed it, we wouldn't be here talking today.
Bob, let me
Yes.
just ask you a question, John, and you have a comment, but a question from your perspective. If there had been no agreement at all, no problem? In other words, we hadn't required Lennar to do it, we just didn't have an agreement.
Well, no, we, feedback would have pushed to have it repaired. That was our going-in position.
Mhm.
We wanted it repaired.
Mhm.
And we only went to the homeowners to get a sense of that. We didn't want to jam it down their throats if they didn't want it.
All right.
So to answer your question, if we hadn't got involved in all it, it would have been repaired.
There seems to be, again, a difference of opinion in this whole thing. There is a whole list of communication between the CDD, Lennar, and the Southwest Water Management District. There's a whole list of back and forth and back and forth and back and forth in which the issue of the easement bubbled to the top on all this. So what Lennar said, and we are well aware that Lennar, just because Lennar says something doesn't mean that they commit to do it.
Totally agree.
Notwithstanding minutes or anything else,
Absolutely.
until Lennar actually.
We've all been through that, I agree with you,
Okay,
Phil.
so the issue from the way it came to us at Carina, was that this issue kind of rose to the top, that the adjudicator at the South Carolina, Southwest Florida Water Management District, is there another way to call it?
South Florida.
Whatever, just the South Florida Water Management District was not going to entertain this case because there was a less expensive solution which included the easement. So however this is couched, Carina was never involved in moving that agenda the way that it got shifted. So if it got shifted at some point during the course of many months, maybe even before the January meeting, it got shifted toward the easement issue. And of course, at that point, we had reason to hire an attorney as an accommodation to try to facilitate moving this thing. And simply, in this case, much less expensive and less time consuming than it would have taken had you gone the other route, in our opinion.
But it was still your board's decision to hire an attorney.
Let me ask you this, had you been on the board of Carina, would you have hired an attorney?
I-
Was it the board's decision, or did your residents vote?
The residents had no vote in this. This is not an owner issue. This easement was granted to the Carina board, not to the owner.
What's the reason for your attorney versus not having more discussion with Tony? I mean, Tony's been helpful to many communities.
We had discussion with Tony, and
And so
we
you
wouldn't-
disagreed with him?
We couldn't come to resolution on the ingress and egress issues, and that's what it all boiled down to. So the issue is, had we engaged Tony, Tony would have billed you, right?
Well, no,
So
you
the
couldn't- you
issue
couldn't-
is Tony represents you, he doesn't represent Karina.
Right, you could not have engaged
We
him.
could not have engaged Tony on this issue
But
because
you
we weren't.
disagreed, but you disagreed with Tony's assessment.
Yeah, but we were trying to accomplish a common goal.
Have you made any attempt to get Lennar to pay this bill? I mean, if they were the ones who were actually on the hook, the way Bob says, this seems like it would have been a really easy solution to them to pay $2,600 instead of $250,000.
I think now that the matter is resolved, Lennar would simply dismiss us out of hand. I could certainly do that. I don't know that it's worth your time or mine for us to do that. I guess if you were to turn me down, maybe that's the route I will go. But the issue here is, we were never engaged with Lennar on this issue, and we were encouraged all along that this was an issue that benefited the turnover, was going to reduce time and effort on the part of the CDD. We took the actions we did. We think we minimized the cost to the
Philip, where did you
entire
get that,
community.
that sense that this was something that would help the CDD? I've heard you say that a couple times, and certainly never heard it from me.
I think where it happens, Bob, is a simple matter of decision-making. I think a matter like this would come up again and again and again. It's going to take the volunteer efforts of the PPAC, so that is some benefit to the CDD.
So it's more implied than anything was ever
Absolutely,
stated.
absolutely.
Okay. Because the South Florida Water Management District, unless you have more knowledge of this than you have than me, but at the time, and we were battling all of our turnovers, you remember all the lengthy meetings when they came here and we told them no, we wouldn't accept them. We got to the point where we frustrated the hell out of South Florida. And then they reached a point in time where they jammed them all through us, and we accepted them carte blanche. And this is the one that still had the open issue, and the open issue was this bank. We had a year from the time that South Florida made us take these conveyances to state what our problems were. And it was within that time frame that everything else occurred. And to my knowledge, and I could be wrong, that was the total involvement of South Florida in this. I never had a meeting with them on this topic ever. It was simply that this was an open item that needed to be adjudicated.
I would suggest that Tony be asked why he suggested that the board approve pursuing it, because Tony would not have done it without there being some benefit.
Well, but once
to
the
the
direction
CDD.
was set, Nancy, then it had to be legally documented. In other words, there were two easements in this property. One was the district's, and the other, I think, was the HOA's. It's somebody else's, another entity. The HOA might have been 10 feet, and ours was another 8 or 9 feet. Well, we didn't have the 8 or 9. So therefore, to get the 8 or 9, we infringed on this other easement. And that's when Tony got involved in compounding or overlapping easements. I think that's the easiest way to say it.
Yeah, the master has the.
Yeah, there was somebody else that had an
The
easement.
master has the easement.
And they said,
for
hey, if the
landscaping.
owners don't want their properties torn up, we can remedy this by overlapping easements. In layman's terms, that's basically what it came down to.
But I think Tony would not have injected himself and the district in the process if it wasn't in some way to protect the
He
district.
had to, because the district was now infringing on another easement. So
Okay.
that's why he got involved.
Okay,
The district would now be overlapping an existing easement to another legal entity, and that's why he got
So there
involved.
was a benefit, there was a benefit to the district.
Well, you can look at it that way, but the other thing is,
Well, there's no point.
well, if we built the thing out, then the district didn't need any benefit.
But,
So it was a
but the
choice of
CDD
Karina.
voted to spend our money to pursue whatever was pursued, whether to get Lennar to.
They said they would, that's why I don't know what all this pursuing is. They sat in a meeting and said that they were gonna do it, they were gonna hold their contractor accountable,
Then why did Tony get involved to begin with?
because they didn't want it done. They said, no, we don't want our lawns torn up. Because they didn't want their lawns torn up, now that's what, everything else cascades downhill.
And we'll take exception, when you and I met late November, December with the engineer. The engineer said he did not recommend the construction.
That's absolutely correct. But
Okay.
not for any other, not for,
But he did
not for
not-
the come back. He just said, looking at this, and this is the first meeting at site, might have been more of them. But the recommendation from Tetra Tech is leave it alone. Okay? They weren't speaking for the district, because even at that meeting, after he said it, but we, the district and the district engineer, defer to PPAC and the Ponds work group.
I'm gonna call a question on this. I think we've had sufficient discussion. Or I guess I can't because there's no motion, but does somebody wanna make a motion one way or the other on this?
I'll make a motion that we accept it.
That we reimburse?
Yeah.
We reimburse Corinna. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
A second. Further discussion?
I would like to see Lennar approached first before we ever consider it. They're the ones that benefit.
I'd like to hear Tony's comments.
Exactly.
I mean, I really would like to hear Tony's side. Can this be deferred a little bit?
It can be deferred.
This is the first time you brought it up to PPAC, right?
Well,
Second.
this is really the second time, but we didn't have this robust
Discussion.
a discussion previously. And Philip has, presented the case. We heard the case frankly from Bob's side, and we didn't hear it from Corinna's side. So I think it may not be inappropriate to,
One more question. You're fairly big as an HOA. You have how many homes?
197.
So what is your budget?
Our budget is somewhere north of $350,000.
yeah.
Why is ours so much higher?
You got a lawyer on his hand.
You're a board member, you tell me.
We have a nicer community.
Well, we have a motion on the table. so
We have a motion on the table. Motion was been made and seconded. All in favor? Any opposed?
Aye.
Okay.
I'd like to make a motion that we get additional information
Well,
from Tony.
okay. At this point, the motion carries, however, that doesn't preclude us from going back.
Revisiting.
Revisiting and getting more information.
I mean, nobody wants our residents to be out money. Certainly I
Yeah,
don't.
yeah.
I just want it to come from a different pocket.
So, the motion, and I was abstaining, I guess, the motion carries 4 or 5, I guess. And any other abstentions? My suggestion is, Philip, that I recognize you don't want to do it, but make a run at Lennar to see whether they would pick this
And
up.
Russell Smith is the VP that made the statement, and Tony's got the minutes from that meeting. I'll probably do too if I can find it, but anyway, he's the guy that said that they would, so it's obvious. Do you want to spend $250,000 or give us 6 and we're all happy?
Bob, would you pursue this with,
Tony?
to get Tony's perspective?
Sure. What is my question, is it Tony?
Whether, I guess, the part that the CDD played in this thing, and whether it was beneficial for us to have this.
I'd rather have somebody else do that.
Okay.
I might be a little too close to it.
I will pursue it with Tony.
Okay.
All right.
Because to me, if we had done nothing, we, the board and everybody else, and they built it, there would be nothing for us to talk about.
Mhm.
I want you to know, you're asking me to do something that is contrary to what makes good sense to me. I've had no dealings with Lennar on this issue. I was not present at the meeting when Lennar said they were going to do the construction.
I will be happy to ask you. You give me the bill or the listing or invoice or whatever it is.
You've got a copy right there.
The
You
attorney
can-
services, okay. I will make the call to Russell
Okay,
Smith.
you'll make- okay.
Keep you in the loop, because I'm
Okay.
most intimately involved. I'm okay with that part.
No.
I mean, to be honest with you, we don't care where we get the money from, but.
I hear you.
But our only dealings were with the CDD.
Um,
I'll be happy to do that.
I'll have Diane make copies of this for everybody.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Philip.
You have the only copy that's not in here, Phil?
Apparently, yeah. This is, Philip, there's just this one copy, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll keep you in the loop.
Hmm?
Is that sent up?
No, it was not. Philip just brought it, so.
You know, last time it came before us, John, we didn't know what the cost was. He didn't know what the cost was.
So I will withdraw my motion.
The motion carried as far as I'm concerned, but that does not preclude coming back.
Reconsidering.
Reconsidering. Okay, we're on to Association Manager Report and Securitas. Scott, you want to have Matt up first, or?
Yes. Good afternoon, Scott Charnock, Pelican Preserve Master Association. Matt Travis is here with Securitas. I'm gonna let him go first, update you on Securitas's activities so he can attend his next meeting.
My budget won't allow it. I'm over my calorie budget.
Matt Travis, Securitas. I must be boring compared to the last person because Bob left. He's back.
Just depositing my noisy candies.
Hey, so I'll update you guys on the same stuff we talked about at the President's Council this morning. I'm gonna do it in reverse order. Something that came up 2 or 3 meetings ago at the President's Council was feedback from the President's residents reporting that vehicles were coming through the resident lane with the barcode working for people that were not Pelican Preserve residents and residents of other communities. So I heard that feedback and we went back to we had the vendor come in and do diagnostics on the barcode reader. We looked at things for potential solutions to that. And we've come up with a solution. We've worked with Dwelling Lot and the barcode reader system. And an upgrade is going into effect next week where the barcode reader will have a patch upgrade on it. And it will have unique identifiers, so only active barcodes for Pelican Preserve community will go through that gate. So any other thing that pulls up people that have.
That really happened?
What really happened?
That the gate opened for some barcode other than ours?
Yeah, because there's a.
Well, you can stop with the yeah.
Yeah.
That bad?
Yeah. It was we ran some reports. It was a very small percentage. But there was a couple other communities that had barcodes that you pulled through and it would open it. And so there's an upgrade that we can do.
How would anyone even know to try it?
Yeah.
That's all
Well,
right, go ahead.
You know, when I first heard it, it didn't surprise me, because being as many communities as we are, and even the community that I live in, we have a small group from church, and people come over, and we have clickers at my community, and they use their clicker, because they live in the villages of Stony Brook, and I live in Cypress Point behind the Lutheran church, and it's both clickers, and their clicker opens my gate. My clicker doesn't open their gate, but their clicker opens my gate. So I know that's something in our world of gated communities and barcodes and RFIDs. There's a finite number, but there is a way that the upgrade can be done to have a unique identifier for our barcodes, and we're getting that done.
Okay, good.
So that's update number 1. This morning I also talked about transaction volume going through the guest lane, counting passes that are scanned and counting passes that are issued. Most of you guys were there to hear the statistics, but the January month-end numbers was 1283 for total transactions. The February month-end number was 12608 for transactions through that lane, and the high month for 2018 was 11565, which was March. The second highest month in 2018 was 11522, which was December. And so January and February were both trending over 1,000 transactions higher per month than the highest months in 2018. So with the amount of doors, as the community grows, we're seeing significantly more volume come through. January represented 24% year-over-year increase. February represented a 12% year-over-year increase. So I just want you guys to be aware of what kind of volumes we're seeing at the front gate.
And I think we should add here that we are doing everything we possibly can, coming up with ideas to facilitate moving this traffic through the gate. The Safety and Security Work Group has been working with Matt and Castle on a large event traffic control, where we've got a lot of people coming in from the outside for a wedding or a meeting or things of that sort. And in fact, that happened the other day. We had 3 meetings at the same time, I think, and then everything went down, so that caused chaos. But we're working on various things, anything we can to kind of speed the thing up, but recognizing that there's a problem. And I think, Matt, it might be worth just making the comment that you made at the meeting this morning, you know, about the fact that in general, if people have done things correctly at the front gate, it only takes about 30 seconds for the guard to let them through the non-resident.
If the residents are properly using dwelling live, it goes nicely.
Exactly, exactly. And at this point, you know, barring, you know, it's difficult to speed the thing up tremendously if we run into these problems. And the Securitas people at the gate, you know, they got a lot of things going on there, and they're doing all they can to move it through as fast as possible.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I just one thought, because I've been up there, I spent quite a bit of time in the last month, just observing.
Sure.
I'll stand there, watch the 2 officers.
Yeah.
But it just occurred to me, and I don't know if this is practical or not, if we had a generic bar pass, and somebody's in the line and says, I'm here for the golf event, you just give them one of these generics, they can go down the resident line. Or I'm here for a wedding, and you give them, you know, the generic one, and they can go down the resident line. I don't know if something like that could even be done, and how you get it back, I mean, but to have 2 guards in the shack, when one's gotta be doing a piping, you know, not really saving much. You got 2 people there, but it doesn't really save a lot of time. It's probably better than not having, but it's just seeing if we kept them out of the line, we'd be a lot further off.
But then you're gonna have unhappy residents, because that line's gonna get really long.
Well, I don't think so. It was, well, you might, I don't know. I will disagree with that.
I'd like to tag on to Bob. I was thinking after the meeting today, the meeting this morning, would it be possible, first of all, I don't think we should give people carte blanche passes that last as permanent passes. I think we should have a time limit, and they should be renewed every once in a while, because people change and people could still have those and be coming in. But would it be possible to make a pass that you could give a guest that has a permanent resident pass, and have them put it on their window and come in through the resident side of the gate rather than having to go through the gate? That might mean some programming issues, it might mean rewriting the program.
So the answer to that one directly is no, because that is a barcode.
Well,
I mean, that's what it is. The only thing on the outside lane is a barcode reader. So
Right.
the only thing that would work is a barcode.
So if we issue
So our
a
passes
temporary.
do not print barcodes. The only thing that is a barcode is the
So
actual
we
sticker
couldn't issue
barcode.
them a temporary pass that if they were, say, a permanent resident or a permanent guest, they could come in and use it for a 6-month period or a year period just by putting it on their, or flashing it to the reader.
Yeah,
because
because
that would
it
move
is
them
not a
out of that
barcode.
lane.
It is not a barcode.
Okay.
Okay.
It's a, I forget the QR code or something like that, so it's a QR code on it that gets scanned by the handheld scanner and inputted into Dwelling Live. The technology piece of it is that there's multiple vendors and multiple pieces at play. And the barcode reader is not Dwelling Live. Dwelling Live interfaces and has a control panel that gets a signal from a barcode reader that identifies this barcode, a 6-digit code, as being attached to a certain resident. But the QR scan is part of Dwelling Live, because it's different technology pieces, so the barcode reader can't get anything other than that 6-digit code off that barcode. But it can identify the 6-digit code. It can't identify a QR code to a resident through the barcode, because it's not directly connected to Dwelling Live.
Well, the non-resident line moves real smooth until somebody that's not in dwelling alive is. And then we crunch to a halt, and they got a call. And that's the bottom line.
Well, the other problem is the resident line, when a resident screws up by pulling too far out.
Oh, yeah.
All right, and it traps people in there.
Yep.
If that person backs up, does it reset, or do you need the guard to reset?
No, it will reset on its own.
but
25 seconds.
But everybody's on everybody's bumper, John.
Well, no, I know that.
Yeah,
25
Alright,
seconds for the reset.
So if it But if that person can't back up because everybody's bumper, then is it the guard that resets it by pushing a button and the gate will work?
I don't think so.
No, the only thing the guard
No.
could do is
They gotta be raising the second
initiate,
gate.
initiate opening the trap gate.
Yeah,
That's what I meant.
But-
that's the second gate.
But that's if they're not dealing with anyone.
Correct. Well,
So-
everybody sits in a dead standstill
Yeah,
until the
I know
guard
that.
notices.
Yeah.
My only question was, I mean, I was like 5 cars behind.
Yeah.
The guy gets out of his car and he's screaming or whatever he's doing. I almost did that once. Anyway, the gate came down on him
On the person?
today.
Today? Uh-oh.
I was,
He,
Well, that's usually.
where was he? I mean, he was under
he
the
got,
gate.
he got out of his car,
Oh, well.
obviously,
He
to
walked
tell
in
the
front.
person to back up.
Oh, right, yeah. Yeah.
And I wondered who finally tripped it. Was it the person that was, the car that was backing up then?
Right, yeah, probably.
Okay. I just was hoping that they couldn't blame the guard.
Yeah.
I really think it's moving better. I mean,
Oh, if the residents
everyone's
know what
getting
they're
used to
doing.
it. Problem is, we've got to retrain everybody again next December.
Was the guy okay?
He got back in his car, he did not complain, he said, I was scared he was gonna come to the meeting.
We're gonna have road rage here.
He didn't have time, probably.
Murder in Pelican Preserve.
Okay. Any
Thank
other questions of Matt? Matt, thank you very much, I appreciate it.
We do know, as I'm stepping away, I'll say that we do know that it's not a 100% perfect system. And with the amount of transactions we do, we're gonna have some errors. Nancy approached me before the meeting, and what she had was she had a specific date and time, a specific person, and she's gonna be able to send me a picture of the pass. That's a great example where that kind of specificity is gonna allow myself and the site supervisor, Chris, to know exactly which officer made the mistake so that we can do effective training with the people that are making the mistakes. So that kind of specificity really helps us in training the staff up to make less and less errors.
Matt, if you got yourself a jacket that said, I'm Mr. Trapke, and you walked around the town center, you'd get a lot of feedback.
Yeah, I'm sure about the
Short
traffic.
life cycle. And not paying a lot of close attention to everything all the time, do we have signs as you're exiting Pelican Preserve that say, use both gates, or that the gate will be open from 8 o'clock in the morning till 5 o'clock at night, so people that are coming in and out
No,
understand?
we don't need more.
Yeah, I do not think there are signs
No, there are
specifically
not.
indicating
I
hours.
wasn't advertising the bar down the street, but, you know,
Yeah.
I was just thinking.
We
if
got enough, they'll slow down to read the sign, and somebody will run in
I
there.
also thought if we had a sign coming in that said guests to the left and residents to the
Yeah, they don't even follow the stop signs, good lord.
Yeah, they're gonna look at stop signs, they're not gonna look, read the other signs.
Good idea, but
But
I
you know
gotta
what?
grab.
Nor did
Whenever
they
I.
read Scott's information.
Thank you, man.
Okay,
whenever
my
I'm
pleasure.
next
Thank you,
in
Scott.
town, I go through that.
All
whole
right,
thing.
Matt, thank you.
All right, Scott Shortut.